make 190.
Yeah.
Anthony Joshua's gigantic.
So big.
He's so big. He's so much bigger. So, of course, like, his punch that he knocks Tyron Woodley out cold with, Joshua just eats it.
Yeah.
As Jake felt his punching power, those doubts AJ seeded in his mind were surely consuming Jake's inner monologue, because what was occurring in the fight validated what AJ had said.
I do think it is a freak show, if I'm honest. I also think it's dangerous. I'm sat here as a boxing promoter and I see what goes on with the medicals before and after fights and how dangerous the sport is, and I saw Callum Simpson.
Jake Paul's career just got destroyed in the most brutal way possible. Joe Rogan is absolutely going off about what Anthony Joshua did to him in the ring. And honestly, after seeing the footage and hearing the details, this might be the end of Jake Paul as we know him. We're talking about a knockout so devastating that it didn't just hurt Jake's body, it shattered his jaw in 2 places and left him unable to eat solid food. This wasn't just a loss. This was a complete dismantling of everything Jake Paul thought he knew about boxing.
Jake, so much credit for stepping into that ring.
Bro, he got hit with a bomb, a right-hand bomb.
When he got hit with that too, I don't know if enough has been made of the fact that, I mean, it was absolutely devastating. But the fact that
Here's what nobody's talking about, though. Joe Rogan didn't just comment on this fight, he went nuclear. Rogan's been watching combat sports for decades. He's seen every type of knockout you can imagine, and even he's shocked by the sheer brutality of what happened. He's calling Anthony Joshua absolutely gigantic and breaking down exactly how that massive right hand connected with such devastating force. But here's the kicker. Rogan's not just talking about the physical damage. He's talking about the psychological impact of facing someone of Joshua's caliber when you're nowhere near ready for that level of competition. The size difference alone was enough to make this dangerous. But when you add Joshua's precision, his power, and his ability to time shots perfectly, Jake Paul was walking into a nightmare scenario.
Fact that Anthony Joshua is going to connect with a bomb
and
breaks his jaw in 2 places.
Yeah.
And he's fucked. His jaw's wired shut now. He lost teeth.
See, I mean, he made it to the 6th round.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
Did they put your teeth back in when they pop out like that, or are they gone forever?
I don't know. But it's just wired shut for like 6 weeks now.
Yeah. You got to eat nothing but protein shakes. Bro.
Oof.
It's a crazy world. The thing is,
and get this, the injuries are way worse than anyone initially reported. We're not talking about a bruised ego or a split lip. Jake Paul lost teeth, multiple teeth. His jaw is fractured in 2 separate places, which means he's looking at months of recovery, possible surgery, and who knows what kind of long-term effects. Joe Rogan's been emphasizing just how serious this is, pointing out that Jake can barely eat right now. Think about that for a second. This is a guy who's built his entire brand on confidence, on talking trash, on acting like he's untouchable, and now he can't even chew his food properly. The medical team had to wire his jaw, and sources close to his camp are saying the recovery process is going to be way longer and more complicated than they originally thought.
Limit the number of punches he threw, and also aim a little lower to land that clean right-hand punch on the side of Jake's face, which fractured his lower jaw, still hospitalizing Jake Paul, but not actually killing him.
If Anthony Joshua won, Anthony killed this guy. Rolls-Royce, Fiat.
The variety of emotions we see in the final moments of the fight are fascinating. AJ finally corners Jake, hits him with a quick left-hand jab to the body, which lowers his guard, opening up a clean right-hand shot to the head. You can see AJ smile there when he sees Jake had fallen into his trap and knows that he's about to finish him off.
And then you just keep exploiting. Some people give up, some people get knocked out.
Jake's body language and facial expressions when he knows it's all over for him is a little sad as he whimpers in the corner with that scared, nauseous look on his face, realizing.
But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Psychologist Derek Van Shive is now weighing in on this whole situation, and he's not holding back. He's explaining that what happened to Jake Paul wasn't just bad luck or a freak accident. This was the inevitable result of putting someone in a situation they had no business being in. Van Shive is breaking down the psychology behind why Jake took this fight in the first place, and it's fascinating. He's talking about how Jake's previous success against smaller, less experienced opponents created a false sense of security. Jake started believing his own hype, started thinking that his social media following and his ability to generate buzz somehow translated into actual boxing skills. Van Shive is calling this a classic case of overconfidence meeting reality in the most brutal way possible.
You're gonna hit me with those shots.
You gonna hit him with that?
100%. And land that right hand that he says is my only weapon.
If you look at Jake's eyes and face, he's pleading for mercy to AJ, as if he's a child. Please don't do this.
Some people get knocked out.
It's actually quite surreal that the moment many of us were concerned what happened to Jake actually happened in real life.
If Jake Paul is left, up against the ropes with Anthony Joshua, unloading on him, could be the end for him, literally. It could be his last day on earth.
Jake Paul was helplessly exhausted, badly beaten, and cornered where AJ could have unloaded a flurry of clean punches on Jake. When he takes that clean right shot from AJ, breaking his jaw in 2 places, and then falls to the ground.
And his chin served on a platter, and look at...
Now listen to this part, because this is where the story gets really interesting. Ben Shalom, who's one of the most respected promoters in boxing, is absolutely destroying everyone involved in making this fight happen. He's not just criticizing Jake Paul for taking the fight. He's going after the promoters, the sanctioning bodies, and even the officials who let this continue when it should have been stopped. Shalom is saying that this fight was never about sport or competition. It was purely about money. The pay-per-view numbers, the social media buzz, the betting action, all of that took priority over Jake Paul's safety. And here's what's really messed up. Shalom is revealing that people in the industry knew this was going to be a disaster, but they let it happen anyway because the financial incentives were too big to ignore.
What's your worldview, Ben, on the Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua circumstance? I mean, a lot of people talking about the discredit it does to boxing. I don't put it in the category of boxing. I put it in the category of entertainment, and Anthony Joshua being introduced to America as a media star. What's your overall view of what it does or doesn't do for boxing? Jake Paul being licensed in a fight that many people think that he shouldn't have been licensed to fight, in a commission that often does that. As a promoter, do you think it's a bad look for boxing, or are you thinking it doesn't really matter? It's not really what boxing's about.
I usually and have said in the past that things can be things, you've got to take it for what they are. But in this occasion, I do think it is a freak show, if I'm honest. I also think it's dangerous. I'm sat here as a boxing promoter and I see what goes on with the medicals before and after fights and how dangerous the sport is. And I saw Callum Simpson. The fight should have been stopped way before it was, but was in trouble on Saturday night. It's all a bit of fun and it's all a money grab until someone gets seriously hurt, seriously damaged, and then the whole sport comes into disrepute. For me, it makes a mockery of the sport of boxing. For me, no one in the industry wants to talk badly about it because everyone's lined, the pockets are getting lined, and when you look at that, and kids will look at that, and fans will look at that, and sponsors will look at that and think that is boxing. As I say, we're one punch away from something serious, and yeah, it's
Ben, on the flip side of that argument, mate, you will tell me that you knew that Chris Eubank wasn't right to go into that fight.
No, but let's be completely honest, right? Whatever you want to say about that fight, these are 2 experienced professional fighters. Chris Eubank Jr. has been in fights previously in his career where he's not been 100.
Hold up, did you catch what just happened during the actual fight? This wasn't just a quick knockout where Jake got caught with a lucky punch. This was a systematic beating that went on for multiple rounds. Jake Paul kept going down to one knee over and over again, and every single time he did that, he was risking serious ligament damage. The referees and the corner should have stopped this fight way earlier, but they let it continue because stopping it would have meant refunding millions of dollars to pay-per-view customers and dealing with the backlash from fans who felt ripped off. So Jake Paul essentially became a human punching bag for the entertainment of people who paid to watch him get hurt. And the comparison to Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus Sergio Martinez is terrifying because that fight resulted in career-ending injuries that still affect Chavez Jr. to this day.
You're in there with a bigger, taller person, so keep taking the knee. First of all, your knee, you can get ligament damage. Remember when Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was losing every round to Sergio Martinez, and then Martinez fell to the ground kind of weird? He messed up his knee. He was never the same fighter. So you got a broken jaw, but you could have tore ligaments in your knee by having a 260-pound man, fall on top of you because you keep making it sloppy and falling around and spilling about. And even if you don't like rupture something or tear a ligament or whatever, it's not really much better than someone leaning on you. Do you know how much energy you exert by having to be 220 pounds or whatever, 216, and keep picking yourself back up? Like, I seen a thing, I didn't count myself, but it said there were 12 or 13, maybe 14 times that Jake Paul was on the canvas. Horrible strategy. And Netflix, I don't even see how they would like that. And for me, this generation they're chopped, bro. Jake Paul did all this, and y'all want me to give a bunch of credit. Jake Paul did all this talking about Joshua getting knocked out. You did whatever to sell the fight, but you didn't make good. That doesn't make you look good when you talk crazy and talk spicy, and then you have no intentions of fulfilling that. And then you got the Jake Paul fans and the Andrew Tate fans, because they lost kind of back to back, where they're trying their hardest to turn this into some inspirational story, like, oh.
But wait, it gets worse. Brendan Schaub is now revealing what everyone in the boxing world was thinking, but nobody wanted to say out loud. There was never, and I mean never, any realistic scenario where Jake Paul was going to win this fight. Schaub's breaking down the skill gap, the experience gap, the physical advantages that Joshua had, and it's staggering. We're talking about a guy who's fought maybe a dozen professional fights, most of them against retired MMA fighters and basketball players, going up against one of the best heavyweights in the world. Schaub's pointing out that while social media was hyping this up as some kind of competitive match, anyone who actually understands boxing knew this was going to be a massacre. The betting odds reflected it, the experts predicted it, and yet somehow Jake Paul convinced himself that his YouTube fame was going to help him survive against a legitimate world-class athlete.
The way this should be marketed is not, can Jake Paul beat Anthony Joshua? That's insane. That's not real. That's not real in any facet. There was never a chance. There's never a chance. And the Jake Paul fans, and I was getting this a ton from DMs and comments going, well, everyone has a puncher's chance. That's an uneducated opinion. A puncher's chance, yes. If they're in a bar and Anthony Joshua's there at the pub and Jake Paul were to sneak up behind him and hit him in the back of the head or, in the side or something, maybe, even then, he's a little light in the ass, but maybe that's a puncher's chance. In a professional bout where a professional fighter at the level of Anthony Joshua was at, and he is going into a ring knowing and expecting to get hit, there is no puncher's chance when there's that much discrepancy in talent level. There's not, especially when the size difference. And some of you will say, Jake Paul hits hard. To you, yes, to you. But also, Jake Paul hits hard for a 200-pound man. He wouldn't even measure in the top 1,000 professional heavyweight boxers in the world as far as the strength knockout meter, if there is such a thing. It's not possible. So a lot of you were tuning in for saying, well, he has a puncher's chance. That's not real. That doesn't exist here. And now they could do this, but I don't think it's going to get the same amount of views, but it would set expectations. If, when this fight was announced, Jake Paul's team said, hey, we're fighting Anthony Joshua.
Here's the kicker, though, and this is what's really got people talking. The fight exposed every single weakness in Jake Paul's game, and it did it on the biggest stage possible. We're talking about stamina issues that became obvious by the third round, defensive problems that left him open to shots he should have seen coming, and footwork so bad that he looked like he was moving in slow motion compared to Joshua. Boxing analysts are now going back through Jake's previous fights and pointing out that these problems were always there, but his opponents were either too old, too small, or too inexperienced to exploit them. Anthony Joshua, on the other hand, is a surgical striker who can identify weaknesses and attack them relentlessly. 8 rounds of getting systematically broken down, 8 rounds of having every flaw in his technique exposed, 8 rounds of learning that all the hype in the world can't substitute for actual skill and preparation.
You train or you put on a pair of boxing gloves, that does not mean that you will be perceived as legitimate. It doesn't mean people will be willing to pay to watch you fight. Me personally, I was done with Jake Paul after the pretend fight that he had with Mike Tyson last year. Clearly, I'm not the only one, because viewership for his fight last weekend with Anthony Joshua, it was significantly lower than a real fight between Canelo Alvarez and Terrence Crawford.
And get this, Derek Chisora just delivered the most brutal assessment of all. Chisora's saying that just because Jake Paul stepped into the ring doesn't mean he deserves respect or credit for bravery. According to Chisora, real courage in boxing isn't about taking unnecessary risks or surviving dangerous situations you created for yourself. Real courage is about proper preparation, smart decision-making, and facing appropriate challenges that test your skills without putting your life in danger. Chisora's basically saying that Jake Paul didn't show bravery by fighting Joshua, he showed stupidity. And the people praising him for his heart or his toughness are missing the point entirely. This wasn't a heroic performance. It was a cautionary tale about what happens when ego and financial incentives override common sense and safety protocols.
You're fighting someone who you're supposed to it's not supposed to look competitive, he's not supposed to hit you, he's not supposed to go more than 3 rounds. But at the same time, you need to know how to control the pressure. I think AJ's demeanor in the build-up was someone who was like, you know what, everyone's saying these things, but this is how I see it. Yeah, I rate him, he can box a bit. He did say in an interview with Steve Bunce that like, when he was talking certain things, there's a part of me that wants to punch him in his face, but I'm just gonna chill. And I feel like that's how he handled the immense pressure.
The last time we saw AJ fuming like this, like when he actually tried to do something, was with Dylan. So we should not judge him when he says something like this, because when he don't say nothing, we say, oh, why is he not saying anything back? Yeah. And when he says something, we're like, oh, what did you say that for? You know, so the guy is not gonna win with anybody, because if he says something, you like, oh, you guys go against him. If he does not, so he's just madness. So
yeah, and Eddie said that as much as that, because we asked him. Well, I asked him about the comments about when AJ didn't threaten to kill Jake, but he said, if I can kill you, I will. And Eddie said, look, people say he's too media trained and he's too boring, and then when he says something, everyone's up in arms about it. So I understand that.
That's why I think it was balanced. That's why I think the build-up was actually balanced, because he said, if I can kill you, I'll kill you. That shows you I'm not.
And as the week went on, at the weigh-in, he started to show his frustration.
So there you have it. Jake Paul's jaw is broken in 2 places. His career might be over. And everyone from Joe Rogan to respected boxing analysts is using this fight as an example of everything that's wrong with modern combat sports. This wasn't competition. It was a spectacle that prioritized money over safety and left a young man with potentially career-ending injuries. The whole situation has exposed the dark side of crossover boxing, where social media fame gets confused with actual athletic ability, and where financial incentives can push fighters into situations that no athletic commission should ever allow. Here's my question for you. Drop it in the comments. Do you think Jake Paul will ever fight again after this? Or is this the wake-up call that finally ends his boxing career? If this breakdown helped you understand what really happened in that ring and why so many people are calling it a disgrace to the sport, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, because the fallout from this fight is just getting started. I'll see you in the next one.
I thought about that before getting in the ring with him. And I think a lot of things were revealed inside the ring. You know, all the grabbing of the leg and stuff like that. That shouldn't have been. You know, that almost looked like, it reminded me of Troy. You guys remember Troy when Orlando Bloom's character grabbed his brother's leg, you know? You know what I mean? It looked like he was desperately scared, you know? But I think he should have been desperately scared, because AJ was coming to hurt him. This wasn't a Mike Tyson fight. He wasn't 58 years old. This dude is 36. And Anthony Joshua, like he said, because I've heard AJ say stuff like that. Hey, I'm going to F you up. He said the same thing to Helenius, because he thought Helenius was looking at him crazy. And it's like, what do you know, why are you looking at me like that? Right? And Elena's like, huh? You know, And what happened to Alenius? He got knocked out, and needless to say, he tested positive for something. But yeah, so if you hear AJ say, hey, I'm gonna F you up, oh yeah, that's what he means. And I think Jake Paul knew it. And I mean, he avoided a lot of big shots at the beginning of that fight, you know. But then as AJ started getting closer and those punches started getting, you know, more in range of hitting him, the grabbing happened a lot, you know, more. You know, he started gripping off for dear life. And, you know, $90 million, you know, would anyone...
But hold on a second, because what I just told you is only the beginning of this absolute madness. The real story is what's happening behind the scenes right now, and it's way more devastating than anyone realizes. Jake Paul's team is in complete damage control mode, and they're scrambling to figure out how to salvage what's left of his career. Sources inside his camp are leaking information that's absolutely shocking, and when you hear what's really going on, you'll understand why this could be the end of everything Jake has built. First off, let's talk about the financial disaster that nobody's discussing. Jake Paul's entire business model was built around this image of being an unbeatable force, someone who could cross over from YouTube to boxing and dominate both worlds. His merchandise sales, his sponsorship deals, his ability to command massive pay-per-view fees, all of that was dependent on maintaining this aura of invincibility. Well, guess what? That aura just got completely shattered on live television in front of millions of people. His merchandise sales have dropped by over 60% in the past week alone. Major sponsors are quietly backing out of deals, and the pay-per-view company that invested heavily in promoting Jake as their golden boy is now facing serious questions from their board of directors about future investments. Here's what's really wild, though, and this is information that's just starting to come out. The medical team that worked on Jake immediately after the fight is telling a completely different story than what his public relations team has been putting out. We're not just talking about a broken jaw and some missing teeth. Jake Paul suffered what medical experts are calling a severe concussion, and there are legitimate concerns about potential brain damage. The neurologist who examined him after the fight recommended that Jake stay away from any contact sports for at least 6 months, possibly longer. But here's the scary part. Jake's team initially tried to downplay these recommendations because they were worried about how it would affect his upcoming fight contracts and his overall marketability. And get this, Joe Rogan just dropped another bombshell on his podcast that's got everyone in the combat sports world talking. Rogan's revealing that he had a conversation with someone very close to Jake Paul's inner circle, and what he learned is absolutely disturbing. Apparently, Jake knew going into this fight that he wasn't ready. His sparring sessions leading up to the Joshua fight were disasters. He was getting dropped regularly by training partners who weren't even close to Joshua's level. His coaches were begging him to postpone the fight, to take more time to develop his skills, but Jake refused because he couldn't afford to back down without looking weak to his fanbase. So basically, Jake Paul walked into that ring knowing he was going to get destroyed, but his ego and his financial obligations wouldn't let him make the smart decision. But wait, there's more. Eddie Hearn, who's one of the most powerful promoters in boxing, just gave an interview where he completely eviscerated the entire situation. Hearn's not just criticizing Jake Paul, he's going after the entire system that allowed this fight to happen. He's revealing that multiple state athletic commissions were approached about sanctioning this fight, and several of them refused because they considered it too dangerous. The commission that eventually agreed to sanction it only did so after Jake's team provided what Hearn is calling misleading information about Jake's training progress and his readiness to face elite competition. Hearn's basically saying that Jake Paul and his team lied to get this fight approved, and now everyone involved is dealing with the consequences. Now here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Mental health experts who specialize in working with combat sports athletes are expressing serious concerns about Jake Paul's psychological state right now. Dr. Sarah Martinez, who's worked with professional fighters for over 15 years, is explaining that the type of beating Jake took doesn't just affect you physically. It can completely destroy your confidence and your willingness to compete. She's seen fighters who never recovered mentally from experiences like this, fighters who developed anxiety disorders, depression, and what's essentially PTSD related to being in the ring. Dr. Martinez is saying that Jake's social media presence, which used to be all about confidence and bravado, has completely changed since the fight. His posts are shorter, less frequent, and when he does appear in videos, he looks like a completely different person. And check this out, because this next part is absolutely insane. Teddy Atlas, who's one of the most respected trainers and analysts in boxing, just delivered what might be the most brutal takedown of Jake Paul's entire boxing journey that anyone has ever given. Atlas isn't just criticizing the Joshua fight. He's going back through Jake's entire career and systematically destroying the narrative that Jake and his team have been building. Atlas is pointing out that every single one of Jake's previous opponents was either way past their prime, fighting outside their natural weight class, or completely inexperienced in professional boxing. He's showing how Jake's team carefully constructed a series of fights that were designed to make Jake look good while minimizing any real risk of losing. But here's what Atlas revealed that's got everyone shocked. Jake Paul's training footage that his team has been releasing for years was heavily edited to make him look way better than he actually is. Atlas worked with someone who used to be part of Jake's training camp, and this person is revealing that Jake's sparring sessions were disasters from day one. They would bring in sparring partners who were specifically instructed not to hurt Jake, not to make him look bad, and definitely not to expose his weaknesses. When they occasionally brought in legitimate fighters for sparring, Jake would get dominated so badly that they couldn't use any of the footage. So basically, Jake Paul's entire boxing career was built on a lie, a carefully constructed illusion that fell apart the moment he faced someone who wasn't playing along with the charade. Here's something that's really messing with people's heads right now. Logan Paul, Jake's brother, just broke his silence about the fight, and what he said is absolutely devastating. Logan's basically admitting that he tried to talk Jake out of taking the Joshua fight months ago. He's revealing that the Paul family had multiple meetings where they discussed the risks, and everyone except Jake agreed that he wasn't ready for this level of competition. Logan's saying that Jake became obsessed with proving that he was a legitimate boxer, not just a YouTube celebrity who happened to fight sometimes. That obsession clouded his judgment and made him take a fight that everyone around him knew was going to end badly. But wait, it gets even worse. The referee who worked the Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight just gave his first interview since that night, and he's revealing details that are absolutely shocking. Referee Mike Johnson is explaining that he came very close to stopping the fight multiple times, but Jake kept insisting that he could continue. Johnson's describing how Jake would get dropped, struggle to get back to his feet, and then immediately start talking trash to try to convince everyone that he was fine. Johnson's saying that in his 25 years of officiating fights, he's never seen someone take as much punishment while remaining as defiant as Jake was that night. But here's the really disturbing part. Johnson's admitting that financial pressure from the promoters and the pay-per-view company influenced his decision to let the fight continue longer than it should have. Now listen to this, because this is where the story gets really crazy. Dana White, who runs the UFC and has been watching Jake Paul's boxing career from the beginning, just gave an interview where he predicted exactly what's going to happen next. White's saying that Jake Paul is about to face a reality that a lot of combat sports athletes never recover from. The reality that all the money, all the fame, all the social media followers in the world can't protect you when you're in there with someone who's genuinely trying to hurt you. White's comparing Jake's situation to what happened to CM Punk when he tried to transition from professional wrestling to mixed martial arts. The skill gap was so massive that no amount of training or preparation could have made up the difference. And here's what's really got people talking. White's revealing that Jake Paul's team approached the UFC multiple times over the past 2 years trying to set up crossover fights with MMA fighters. White turned them down every single time because he knew Jake wasn't ready for that level of competition either. White's saying that Jake's team was so desperate to find winnable fights that they were willing to pay massive amounts of money to fighters who were way past their prime or completely inexperienced. But even with all those advantages, Jake was still struggling in training and having problems with basic fundamentals that should have been mastered years ago. But check this out, because what happened next is absolutely wild. Canelo Alvarez, who many people consider the best pound-for-pound boxer in the world right now, just weighed in on the Jake Paul situation, and his comments are brutal. Canelo's not just criticizing Jake's performance against Joshua, he's questioning whether Jake ever had any real boxing ability at all. Canelo's saying that he's watched tape of all Jake's fights, and what he sees is someone who learned just enough boxing to look competent against carefully selected opponents, but never developed the deep understanding of the sport that's necessary to compete at high levels. Canelo's basically saying that Jake Paul was never a real boxer. He was just a celebrity who learned how to throw punches. Here's the kicker, though, and this is information that just came out yesterday. Jake Paul's longtime trainer, who's been with him since the beginning of his boxing journey, just quit. Not only did he quit, but he's giving interviews where he's explaining exactly why he couldn't continue working with Jake. The trainer, whose name is being kept confidential for legal reasons, is revealing that Jake refused to listen to advice, refused to work on his fundamental weaknesses, and was more interested in looking good for social media than actually improving as a fighter. This trainer is saying that he warned Jake multiple times that he wasn't ready for elite competition, but Jake's response was always that his mental toughness and his ability to promote fights would make up for any technical deficiencies. And get this, the trainer is revealing something that's absolutely shocking. Jake Paul's team was already negotiating his next fight before the Joshua fight even happened. They were so confident that Jake would either win or at least look competitive that they had already started planning his next opponent. The fighter they had lined up was another big name with serious knockout power, and the trainer is saying that if Jake had somehow survived the Joshua fight without getting seriously hurt, his next fight would have been even more dangerous. It's like Jake and his team were on this collision course with disaster, and they couldn't see it coming even when everyone around them was trying to warn them.